The implosion of Boston's Pride Parade is a sign of things to come. The woke are eating their own again. Boston Pride is one of the oldest alphabet soup organizations in the U.S., with its first parade having taken place in 1971. Last year would have marked the 50th parade, but the event was canceled due to the pandemic. This year's events also didn't materialize, but not entirely because of government lockdowns. Rather, Boston Pride celebrated a half-century plus of existence by collapsing into social panic and canceling itself. Oh, isn't that just tragic? Don't you just hate seeing the piranhas turn on each other? Oh, who am I kidding? Grab the fucking popcorn. This is going to be good. I mean this literally. Boston Pride no longer exists. The organization was dissolved from within in July when its board of directors released a statement that read, in part, It is clear to us that our community needs and wants change without the involvement of Boston Pride. We have heard the concerns of Alphabet Soup and others. We care too much to stand in the way. Therefore, Boston Pride is dissolving. There will be no further events or programming planned, and the board is taking steps to close down the organization. So long, and thanks for all the fish, basically. We know many people care about pride in Boston, and we encourage them to continue the work. By making the decision to close down, we hope new leaders will emerge from the community to lead the pride movement in Boston. Now this, I'll give them credit. This was the perfect response to what happened. Like, oh, okay, we're just going to shut it down then. We're going to take the money and go. And if you guys want this to continue, it's on you. You start the next one. Go ahead. You do the work. And what are the Alphabet Soup community's concerns? Well, it's a long, surreal, and tragicomic story. And to tell it coherently, I have to start with events that took place more than 6 years ago. Ooh, grab your popcorn. The seeds of Boston Pride's self-destruction were sown in June of current year -6, ironically just weeks before the U.S. Supreme Court released its decision in the case of Obergefell versus Hodges, which required all states to issue marriage licenses to same-sex couples. Massachusetts had already legalized it in current year -17. On June 13th, about a dozen burn, loot, murder rioters managed to halt Boston's annual Pride Parade for 11 minutes, 1 minute for each transmission person that had been Minecrafted that year, they explained. The rioters released a statement declaring that we live in a society. Wow, they are their own memes, man. That have declared war on black people, women, immigrants, trans people, poor people, and at the intersection of all that, trans women of color. It is the duty of the entire Alphabet Soup community to stand united and prove that all of our lives matter. You got marriage. What do we have? So what happens now is the gay community gets thrown under the bus. They also issued a long list of demands, including the following. We demand a pride board as diverse as our community and not solely comprised of wealthy white capitalist gays and lesbians. Oh, man, you guys, you're the ones that wanted these people. I hope you enjoy them. You get what you fucking deserve. We demand our community come out publicly against holding the current year +3 Olympics in Boston. The Olympics will bring unprecedented gentrification, surveillance, cutting of social services, and punitive policing to our city. Don't worry about it. The Olympics are pretty much dead. We demand that Boston Pride remembers that Pride started as a riot led by trans and gender nonconforming people of color. So they're admitting to being rioters. Burn, Loot, Murder also complained that the parade had been held in a downtown area of Boston, a location that purposely excludes communities of color and perpetuates the idea that communities of color are somehow more homophobic than white people. Some stereotypes might exist for a reason, huh? Now, I think this is a good idea, though. Let's just recenter the Pride Parade like smack dab in the middle of the hood. I wouldn't be opposed to that. Now, putting aside poll data that shows that American whites are on average less homophobic than their minority counterparts, it seems strange to suggest that this had any bearing on the question of where a Pride Parade would be held. In Boston, as in other cities, downtown areas are the traditional venue for this kind of civic event because they are centrally located. Which is why I would be all for moving this to the hood. because I can't stand it when I'm just trying to get somewhere, but all the streets are closed because of a parade. It's even worse if you happen to have a house somewhere on the parade route. Like, fuck, I guess I'm going to have to park my car in somewhere else for a few hours while I wait this out. Things got worse in Korean Minds 5 when Boston Pride chose a police officer, Anthony Imperioso, as Pride Marshal. Rioters circulated a no police marshals at Boston Pride petition. They found the selection of Imperioso to be particularly objectionable, as he previously expressed unfavorable opinions about burn, loot, murder rioters shutting down a major Boston highway during rush hour in January. Why would anyone have an unfavorable opinion of that, I wonder? On Facebook, he called them very unpatriotic, anti-American trash with a left-wing Marxist agenda. Is anyone disputing his claims, though? Because I'm not detecting any lies. Boston Pride withdrew his marshalship and apologized. Yeah, they're just burning all of their bridges. It's actually pretty funny. In current year -3, another sit-in disrupted the parade, this time under the banner of a group called No Justice, No Pride. Its members were upset with the involvement of corporate sponsors who had also donated to Republican politicians. See, look, they're literally saying you're either with us 100% or you're the enemy. There can be no coexistence anymore. I say, fine, cut them off, ban them, block them, stop working with them. They want to bring back this type of segregation, so be it. The presence of alphabet soup police officers at the parade and an invitation that had been extended to the Israeli consulate in Boston on the claim that Israel used alphabet soup advocacy as a means to distract from their human rights abuses towards the Palestinian people, including apartheid and ethnic cleansing. Rioters were further incensed when Boston Pride added a U.S. Army veteran and former Secretary of the Massachusetts Log Cabin Republicans, the alphabet soup wing of the GOP, to its board. In short, the rioters resented the idea of a pride parade that included any constituency, alphabet soup or otherwise, connected to Republican politics, law enforcement, the military, or Israel. Good. Cut all their support. At least I'm glad the board eventually just got so fed up with it, they all quit. Like, we're just going to shut the whole thing down if you guys are going to be like this. If you want to continue this, now's your chance to make your own. Look, there's this big void right here just waiting to be filled. Come on, guys. You wanted this. Step up. But all of these controversies paled compared to the one that developed in current year -1. Following the overdose of George Kirby in May, when Boston Pride released a pro-burn, loot, murder statement that had been watered down from the original draft that had been prepared by the group's communications team, the revisions included, this is going to be good, replacing 2 instances of police violence with violence committed by some members of the law enforcement community and brutal acts committed by people wearing police badges and uniforms. Removing a call to donate money to anti-racist organizations. If you were to do that, you'd be donating to the Republican Party instead of blatant racists like burn, loot, murder. Removing a call to demilitarize the police. Now that should be done, in my opinion. Like, that's actually a good call. Replacing oppressions are interlocked. No one is free until we're all free. Burn, loot, murder with no one is free until we're all free. We are Boston Pride and Wicked Proud. The board's longtime president, Linda DeMarco, explained the language originally suggested by the communications team had a little too strong against the police. And we have a very good relation with the Boston police. When board members refused to resign en masse so that they could be replaced by more inclusive slate, about 80% of Pride's volunteers resigned in protest, along with the chairs of the Burn, Loot, Murder and Latino Pride subcommittees. In a new statement released under the Burn, Loot, Murder hashtag, the board asked for forgiveness and promised to hold themselves accountable by shutting down. We have heard the voices of concern from members of the community regarding a previous statement posted on our website related to the recent atrocious events of the murders of minority people at the hands of police officers in so many places across the country. Let's just ignore all the stats that they're actually killed in higher, that white people are actually killed higher percentages by police officers, but whatever. We deeply apologize for the hurt and pain we caused by our shortcomings. We pledge to hold ourselves accountable now and in the future. Grow some fucking balls, guys. Like, I do respect them for eventually just shutting the whole thing down, but they should have done that in the first place. Shut it down as opposed to groveling. If you already groveled anyway, like, dude, it's gone. We acknowledge that we need to do more as a social justice organization to not only communicate our outrage, horror, and intolerance of these acts of police violence, but also take a substantive action to better address racism and white privilege within Boston Pride, the alphabet soup community, and society at large. That's right. Yeah, dignity. I guess that was one of the words I was looking for. No balls detected. But rioters weren't satisfied, and the board was pressured to make some concessions, even the shelving of nearly all virtual Pride events in favor of events that support the Black and Brown community. So pretty much they've been co-opted. By this time, it seemed no gesture of apology or appeasement would suffice, which is why you just tell these guys to fuck off. It's that simple. Just fuck off. And some former volunteers set up a rival group called Pride for the People as a vehicle to organize boycotts. A group of transmission activists had also started a separate group called Trans Resistance MA to advocate for the safety, joy, and liberation of alphabet soup. Together, these groups put on a trans resistance march and vigil for Black trans lives as an alternative to the canceled Pride Parade. But in contrast to the celebratory, upbeat mood that generally characterizes Pride, the march and vigil were somber and somewhat morbid and unattended. So yeah, let these guys take over. The organizers even issued a set of special instructions for any white person planning to attend the event. One commenter advised that white queers should pretend you are attending a funeral for a friend of a friend of a friend. You want to support the friends here, but you don't really know how that know the person who passed. Would you shove yourself to the front of the room and sob and make everyone else uncomfortable? I sure hope not. That funeral isn't for you. It's for people who are seriously hurting, and you're there to show support. Sounds fun, no? Honestly, any white people that would put up with that shit, you're a bunch of cucks anyway. No one cares about you. By mid-June of current year -1, rioters were insisting that there was no other solution except for the Pride board to completely surrender control of the organization to their activist critics. They blasted the board for its white-centeredness and for being trans exclusionary. At the time, the board had 6 members, 4 whites, 2 Latino, one of whom was trans, but no Black members. In response, the board members announced a planned transformation of Boston Pride. You should have just shut down then, man. As a last-ditch strategy to maintain their positions, board members hired 2 diversity consultants, Judah Abijah Dorrington and Laverne Saunders. Oh my God, I recognize that one. Their consultancy self-describes as specializing in transforming organizations to honor and operationalize their social justice missions from theory to application to practice. Translation, they're scammers. They extract tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars for nothing. The firm's services also include the restoration of the good inherent nature of human beings by facilitating transformation in individuals, groups, organizations, and governments as they heal from the effects of traumatizing oppressions. So basically, be racist against whites. Like, that's what it is in practice. After 6 months under the tutelage of Dorrington and Saunders, Boston Pride announced the details of its grand transformation, which included the declaration that it will now be prioritizing the representation of queer, transgender, or gender non-binary, Black, Latino, Indigenous, or other people of color. The Boston Pride also announced new positions on its board as well as new committees to staff. Pride for the People and Trans Resistance MA, however, dismissed this as a faux transformation. Nothing will ever be good enough. If you got this hate mob coming after you, you either immediately shut down or find where you put your balls and tell them to go fuck themselves. Because as soon as you bend the knee to them, no, they'll just keep beating you and nothing will ever be good enough again. So, an instructed supporters to boycott the new board seats. As a Boston Globe writer noted, this led to a bizarre standoff that went on for months. On the one hand, rioters said they wouldn't participate in the board's allegedly insincere reform effort until these same rioters occupied a majority of the board positions. On the other hand, they couldn't occupy any board positions, let alone a majority, until they ended the boycott. Isn't it just so sad watching these piranhas eat each other? No, it's not. It's fucking hilarious. You appeal to these kinds of people, you deserve everything you fucking get, man. All of this, of course, was going on during the government lockdowns. Government lockdowns that caused Pride to announce in February of current year that there would once again be no summer parade, while leaving opening the possibility of a replacement event in the fall. If all conditions are in place for such events, as this year's theme was later selected as the Rainbow After the Storm, which reflects the past year being one of major pain, sorrow, and upheaval in the community and the world as a whole. It represents an opportunity to come together again and support Yeah, blah, 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 whatever. But anti-board coalition doubled down on its boycott, instructing Alphabet Soup community members to skip all current year Boston Pride events and withhold donations unless the board resigned and control of the organization was ceded to the rioters. If it's your company, just shut it down. Don't give up control. Just shut it down. Like, no, we're just closing. Now, I'm just curious, though. The lockdowns didn't prevent the burn, loot, murder riots. Why would they stop this? On April 16th, Boston Pride announced the appointment of 7 non-boycotting community members to its new Transformation Advocacy Committee. A week later, the police officer who was blamed for the overdose of George Kirby was convicted of murder and an apparent atonement for its perceived sins following Kirby's death. Boston Pride's board released a statement that systematically name-checked every possible activist slogan and talking point. Oh my God. I got to prepare myself because I know this is going to be painful to read, but it's probably going to be too funny to pass up. Our thoughts and hearts are with the family and friends of George Kirby, who would be alive today if not for overdosing on fentanyl. We acknowledge and understand that his actions are a manifestation of a deeper problem rooted in over 400 years of systemic racism, white supremacy, and social justice inequity. One single conviction of police minecrafting is not enough. Police violence and murder disproportionately targets Black, brown, and indigenous and other people of color. That's a provable lie, by the way, especially Black trans women. Our hope is that police accountability rooted in systemic racism will be the norm rather than the exception. We stand in solidarity with others in the struggle and extend police accountability to include Alphabet Soup. We will continue to our commitment to hold ourselves accountable and be held accountable as we work in partnership with the Alphabet Soup communities to displace white supremacy and dismantle systemic racism. Hey, they've succeeded in kneecapping a bunch of police departments, and hey, crime's skyrocketing. Good job. We will be active participants in creating and maintaining a just and equitable world for everyone. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. They don't see the irony that these organizations are among the biggest purveyors of injustice. They also included this telling postscript. This statement was a collaboration of the Boston Pride Board and staff, Boston Pride's communication team, the New Transformation Advisory Committee, and DAIE consultants, Dorrington and Saunders LLC. These groups are working together in an organization during its ongoing transformation process to ensure that Boston Pride's intentions and rationale are in alignment and the best interest of the Alphabet Soup community. In other words, the memo represented a complete ideological surrender to the board critics who'd sought to reimagine Pride as an explicitly racist social injustice organization that prioritizes the demands of trans people, Black trans women in particular, over other members of the Alphabet Soup community. And watch as all the other members just quit. The board members also took the extra step of humiliating themselves by noting they were under close oversight of minders who might slap them down if they went off script. It was a call for help. Not surprisingly, the current year iteration of Pride Month was a dud in Boston, with almost all the June events being either canceled or boycotted. The only major events to take place was the second Trans Resistance March and Vigil for the Black Trans Lives. On June 9th, amidst this depressing climate of conflict and failure, Linda DeMarco told the Boston Globe she had planned to resign as board president. She added that her resignation was a little accelerated now because I think the boycott is really hurting the community. Translation, I don't want to be around these toxic motherfuckers anymore, so I'm leaving. But far from being a victory for rioters, the move turned out to be a defeat for everyone because rather than continue with a coerced process of transformation, Boston Pride's board simply announced its dissolution. The only smart move they made in this entire story. They should have done this from the start. Pride for the People and its allies were scathing, accusing the board members of preferring to shut down the organization rather than include Black and trans people. Why are you mad? Just make your own. They left the stage open for you. That explanation seems unlikely given the servile gesture the board had assumed towards the same groups, but the truth is no one knows exactly why the board members took the route they did. Whatever their reasons, though, Boston Pride is no more. New England's largest Alphabet Soup parade is in limbo, and whatever leadership emerges to fill the void will, in all likelihood, assume a posture that is more radical, more shrill, and more off-putting to the general public. It's no longer going to be a party. It's going to be a fucking funeral. In any political movement, riders face an existential question. What do we do if we win? Yup! Every single fucking revolution is like this. As soon as the underdog becomes the man, they still consider themselves the underdog. Like, look at these guys. They control the government, all of big tech, most of the media, and they still pretend like they're the oppressed ones. They are the man. Most never have to answer that question because winning is hard, especially when you have lofty goals, or in some cases, nebulous or unattainable ones. Well, in these guys' case, they're also very incompetent. So save the planet, demand justice now. But in the case of gay rights, the goals from the beginning were pretty specific, and legal victories achieved in the last 20 years have been swift and comprehensive. In the U.S., landmark Supreme Court cases have struck down statutes criminalizing homosexuality and established equal rights in marriage, employment, and military service. Beyond the legal victories, the movement had also won broad popular support. In 1996, just 25 years ago, only 27% of Americans supported same-sex marriage rights. Today, the figure is a record 70%. Oh, it's going to swing back the other way real soon, though, with all the damage these rioters have done. Since Obergefell, pride organizations in many parts of North America have been flush with cash and political influence, but not quite sure what to do with it. In Boston, as in other cities, pride is fractured into several camps. Yeah, so what's happening here is professional victims always have to be victimized. They always have to have an oppressor, or else their grift dries up. So they always manufacture new oppressors. This is why I keep telling you, cut these people off. Block them, mute them. Just don't interact with them at all. Because if they don't see you, like out of sight, out of mind, when they're hunting for a new oppressor, they will look out and only see others like them. And the regressive stack is going to start to unravel as they turn each other into the new oppressor. So one is made up of those who are happy to see pride become a blander, more corporate mass participation institution within America's ever-expanding civic calendar. The second major block is made up of those who seek radicalism for its own sake and who are desperate to rekindle what they see as the revolutionary origins of pride. And so if gay rights are no longer radical, they insist the alphabet soup movement must pour its energy and resources into causes that offer the possibility of militant politics, such as radical gender movements, the erasure of biological sex, anti-capitalism, demonization of Israel, extreme forms of anti-racism, basically just racism, pacifism, and police abolition. Even gays and lesbians, now seen as the privileged elite of the alphabet soup population, are the subject of suspicion and even animosity. I've been warning you guys for as long as I've had this channel that gay men, especially of all races, your usefulness to the mob is done. You will be discarded. You probably already have been discarded. This affected radicalism is totally unmoored from the reality that the alphabet soup movement has achieved nearly all of its goals. Even in regards to the nominally radical causes these riders tend to embrace, the conceit of being brave and revolutionary is quite thin, because it turns out that many of these same causes are actively supported by regressive politicians, academics, major cultural institutions, Hollywood, and even corporations. Riders who tell themselves that they're raging against the machine have, in many cases, become the machine. Yeah, we are now the underdogs. As a gay American, I celebrate what the gay rights movement won for me and millions of my compatriots, but I mourn what it has become. The good news about Boston Pride dying from within is that its death is really a symptom of victory, not defeat. We simply don't need the movement anymore in order to live full and equal lives in society. Oh, but the grifters still need it. The bad news is that its death throes and radical rebirth will generate more farces the sort Boston has been subjected to for 6 years and counting. I don't view that as bad news. I view that as even more good news. What he's saying is we get to see the woke continue to eat each other as time goes on. How is that bad? I'm looking forward to this. This sounds hilarious to me. Oh man, I am so excited to tell you guys right now that finally, after about a year of build-up and shilling, we have launched Blade Devil on Indiegogo, and so far it is doing so well thanks to awesome people like you. If you haven't backed it yet, then please check the links in the description and check out Blade Devil on Indiegogo. You will not be disappointed. Looking forward to seeing you there.